we do have one speaker today who will be doing a presentation, and she will be willing to answer the questions after then. But a lot of today is going to be with one person sharing their experiences with us who we have filmed. So the agenda for today is Franco, who is a young man who has been in the mental health system since he's been around the age of 15. So he's been in and out. He's autistic, very, very intelligent guy, and he very was willing to share with us his experiences. We have got them split down into quite a few short little videos. Some of it is quite hard to listen to. Some of it, if you are coming from the mental health teams, may have different attitudes to what is being said, as it may not be the same experiences that you've had. It'd be great to sort of hear about that. And we will be starting off with him in CAMHS and then going through to adult services. We have got Elizabeth Turner with us from Autism Bedfordshire, who's with us till 1 o'clock, and she will be answering some questions after the first set of videos with him, if anyone's got any questions there. And then Leanne Gelder is joining us, and she will be talking us through the new care standards for mental health inpatient services that was published. So without further ado, we're going to get started, and we do tend to follow the National Autism Strategy as much as we possibly can in these webinars to try to keep raising that awareness, keep it in the public focus that there is a reason and there is legislation behind everything that we are talking about. And the National Autism Strategy to 2026 does say that for autistic people who really need care in inpatient settings, we want to show this is of high quality, therapeutic and tailored to their needs and as close to home as possible. And we meet with a lot of autistic people. We have voice groups that we do for Hear Me, See Me across the east of England alongside these webinars. And we do hear experiences that do not match what this is saying in the strategy, where there is definitely improvement is felt needed by the autistic people who are experiencing the care. So we're going to start off sort of where you start to meet Franco, and his first experiences were around the age of 15, and so I'm just going to click through these 3 videos in quick succession, and then please do put any questions in the chat now, and Liz will take them at the end of this session. I am apologising that it is a little bit clunky as I go from one to the other. They've got split down on purpose for other reasons, that we're able to share bits and pieces with whoever we need to share them with. So his first experience of CAMHS, then it'll be going to inpatient care, and then being discharged from CAMHS. So I've just said there's your questions, and we will get going with where you can meet Franco.
I was 15 when I first experienced CAMHS, and that was during a mental health crisis in September 2020. I took an overdose based off of quite a lot of distress that was happening, and I was taken to A&E. Ambulance crew weren't very nice to me because obviously they found me like at the side of the road, like collapsed and slurring my words because I'd overdosed. And they thought I was like an adult and that I was just drunk or on drugs or faking it. They actually asked me if I was like faking it. And I was like crying the whole time, and they were just like yelling at me to like stop crying. And so then I got to A&E, and they took me to adults A&E, and they found out that I was 15, and they apologized so much. And then like my mum came, and I was taken onto a ward from A&E. And the ward I don't think it was a mental health assessment. I just had a meeting with the CAMHS crisis team, and I didn't really know anything about CAMHS. Obviously, I'd known friends who'd been through CAMHS. My sister had been through CAMHS, and so I thought that they were just going to send me inpatient because I thought they just sent people inpatient anyway. I didn't really understand what inpatient was back then. But no, they ended up speaking to me and sending me back home with a support plan and I think the support plan consisted of I got one phone call like a few days later, and that was it. And I remember during whilst I was being discharged, they spent ages. The doctor spent ages. He was a consultant pediatrician, and he was writing my discharge papers. And he wrote that I had misinterpreted something that someone had said to me, and I then had like a meltdown and taken an overdose. And what had actually happened was someone had tried to ask me to like help commit a crime with them, and then when I like said no, they then spread loads of lies across me about the internet. After that, I just like I don't want this autism diagnosis, and I wanted to get my autism diagnosis revoked. Obviously, my depression was getting worse because I experienced a lot from that, and I was struggling with school and struggling a lot with loneliness, and I then I ended up having another crisis. I sort of like walked to a bridge, thought about jumping, didn't do it, and also the water level was so high, I wouldn't have died anyway. I would have just been swept up in the cold. And I ended up walking a lot further, just cutting up my face, getting cold, getting wet in the middle of the night, and then going back, and then having my parents taking me to A&E the next day. And at A&E, I had the same crisis team, and I wanted to go inpatient because obviously I knew that if I stayed in the community I wouldn't get any support, and I didn't know what inpatient was like. I just kind of thought I get to go away from this place that I hate so much. I get to be out of school. I get to actually speak to people and actually meet people who I can like have a conversation with. I partly went inpatient because I was lonely and because I didn't really know. I knew that I wasn't going to get any support, so I was like, well, inpatient, maybe I'll get better if I go there. And so I got sent. I got sent to a CAMS ward. It wasn't that far. It was about 2.5 hours away from home. This was the first support I got from CAMS, really, because I was now on a CAMS ward. I remember walking onto the ward and seeing all of the patients and just thinking, oh, um, because I obviously had no clue what to expect, but everyone looked a lot more ill than I was, and that's something that I hear a lot of people say because I don't really have much scarring. I had some scars back on my face back then, but that was all I had. And I walked onto a ward, and there were just loads of people just sitting around, and everyone had a lot of scarring, and everyone looked very poorly. And I remember thinking, okay, I'm not sure if I really fit. I'm not sure if I really fit into this. Um, and yeah, I started speaking to people. I sort of made friends there, and that was good. Um, the incidents I was not used to. Um, I was not used to watching anyone self harm. I was not hit used to an alarm. I was not used to head banging. I was not used to seeing people covered in blood, which happened quite a lot. And I didn't like that. And they had no psychologist on my first ward, so I didn't. I saw a music therapist, and she was really good. We didn't actually do music therapy. We just sort of talked, really. And I had a family therapist as well, because I didn't speak to my parents for a while when I got there. I tried to like not talk to my friends and not talk to my family because I just thought, okay, this is time to focus on myself. This is time to get better. And of course, I don't really know how anyone can get better in that environment. I guess the two options you have are you get out and then you stay out because you've had enough, or you just keep getting worse because you keep getting triggered. And I didn't have any incidents like the whole of that first one. I had one and they didn't notice it because I didn't show it. And yeah, it was not a nice. It was I quite compared to the three wards, it was actually the least bad experience, but it was not nice. And after I'd been there for about a month, I'd had no incidents, and I asked to be discharged because like I'm ready to go home now. And I think I actually was ready to go home. I don't know if I would have got better if I'd gone home, but I knew things would have been definitely quite a bit different to how they were if I had gone home. And I was put on a section 5-2, so they just said, we don't want you to go home, we're worried about you. I was like, what grounds do you have for that? Because I know that I haven't got better, but I haven't got worse, and I haven't done anything to hurt myself. And you don't have a psychologist here. You can't really treat me. You haven't changed my medication. But no, I was forced to stay, and I was meant to have the mental health assessment the next day, and the psychiatrist just said, "I tell you what, how about I remove the section and you just go back to informal if you agree to stay here." And I was thought, hang on. So I wondered if I would have got out during that 5-2 assessment, because they really had no reason to keep me there, I guess. I mean, I still struggled with mental health. I still was depressed. I still probably wanted to die. I don't know. I just don't know if things would have been different. And yeah, after that, things got a bit worse. Didn't really know what to do once I got discharged, because I got like sent right back into school. No CAM support, of course. I was given a CAM psychiatrist, and I had my first assessment with him, and I went to the CAMS building, and then we waited for ages, and then we were just like, is this doctor here? And he was like, actually no, he resigned this morning. I was like, what? So my psychiatrist resigned, and I didn't really get a replace. Well, I did get a replacement. I got a locum replacement who was not a very good psychiatrist. She didn't really know how to, I guess, speak to adolescents, I guess. And I got her, and I ended up doing a week. Well, I ended up doing about 5 days in an adult ward, which I admitted myself to. I was like in a holding bed. I just spent 5 days there, which of course achieved absolutely nothing, because it's just 5 days in a bed, really, just 5 days away from stuff, and that didn't help. So I decided to go back home after that, and I was struggling a lot with school, because it was GCSE year. I was in year 11, and my friends admitted they didn't really know how to like talk to me after all this had happened, because I was such a different person. I was kind of I don't say PTSD. I say shell shocked, because it's a better description, because it was just such an ongoing level of thing. But yeah, I ended up I wanted to go. Well, I wanted to kill myself again. So I sort of actually, what I did was quite mean. I sort of tricked my parents. So what I did was I went for a walk abruptly, just left the house and started walking in the most obvious direction that I was obviously going to walk. Like, I started walking towards Milton Keynes from where I was, and like along like the side of the main road, and like my dad like obviously worked out what I was trying to do, because it was obvious. However, they didn't realize was that I planned for that. I planned for them to pick me up for obviously doing the most obvious thing, and then they took me back. And then they ended up taking me to A&E the next day, which is what I wanted, because from A&E I absconded, because it's a lot easier to kill yourself in Milton Keynes than it was from where I was. So I went, sort of did like a beeline towards the train station. I went through some pretty rough housing districts, and I was cutting myself to shreds with like bits of glass and things. So like, had my wrist was all messed up, and my hand was all messed up, and I was like covered in blood. Just like, people were just like walking past me, and I was just like covered in blood, looking absolutely insane. No one really cared. And I got to the top. I got to the top of the car park at the station. Went to the edge and decided not to jump. I think it was because of my partner at the time. I had a very close relationship with them, and yeah, I had a very close relationship with them. And I decided I'm going to give this another chance. And so I got back down off the ledge, went back, and then went to try and... I didn't really know what to do, because I didn't have my phone. So I was just kind of find some way to get to help. I saw police walking towards a police car, went up to the police car, knocked on the window, and then they section 136 me. So I got taken to the 136 suite, which consisted of a bench in a room. The lights did not switch off in the room, and I sat in that room for 26 hours. just with the lights on. I think I had a blanket. 1-to-1 was in a different room. His English wasn't very good, and he was singing. He was singing the whole time. And the only entertainment I had was his singing, which wasn't very good. I mean, yeah, it wasn't like a pop song. It was like in an African language, so that was kind of interesting. But it would have been better if he had a better singing voice. And then after that, I had the assessment. They brought in Milton Keynes had no psychiatrist then, so they just brought 2 doctors from out of area, and they sat them down with me, and I had the mental health act expert, and he asked me about the process, and he said, "Do you know what your options are?" And I said, "Yes, I have 3 options. You send me back home with no support. You ask me to come inpatient, otherwise you'll section me. Otherwise, or you section me." And he said, "Do you know the difference between being informal and being sectioned?" And I said, being informal is essentially a lie that presents you with the illusion of choice, I guess. Because if you're informal, that doesn't mean you can leave, and everyone thinks it means you can leave. But no, you can't leave if you're informal, and people say you can't be restrained, you can't be injected, you can't be forced medication. You can be all of those things if it's deemed to save your life or if it's deemed in your best interest. So I didn't really see any difference being informal and being sectioned. I decided to go informal because I couldn't be bothered to be sectioned. So I then went back to the adult ward.
So that is the end of these 3 films. I haven't been able to look at the chat while they were on. Does anybody have any questions? Or Annette, have you seen any on there that Liz could answer? And thanks, Liz, for being with us.
Hi, Heather. So I haven't seen any questions around the videos. It's more about sound and what have you.
Yeah. So Liz, could I just ask you, with some of the work that your team has been doing, maybe could you just give a quick explanation of what your team is? It's probably a good start. And then the experiences that they've had.
Yeah, of course. So I've just typed, actually, I'll pop it in the chat in a second, just my contact details if anyone's got any questions, or if anybody doesn't know about the key worker function that is a national function now, and we work up to the age of 25 supporting young people who are autistic and or have a learning disability who are at risk of a tier 4 admission. So we work with a variety of young people who have very sort of different struggles, I suppose. And work with education, social care and health to ensure that they're getting the right support at the right time. And that will look like, trying to essentially coordinate support to avoid admission, but also ensuring that there's, or trying to get the system pulled together so that there's a robust discharge plan, so that when young people are going back into the community, that they still have that support, and it's not kind of that cliff edge. And as you can imagine, it's quite a challenge. But as I say, if you're not aware already, it is a national offer. It's not a statutory service, so it's a kind of an opt-in, opt-out, so we do have to have consent from the family, but yeah, it's also around supporting parents to navigate the system as well, because it's very confusing and overwhelming for them to know who does what and where to go and what to ask. So and also challenging the system as well, around trying to get that support in place, which I'm sure all of you have the similar challenges day in, day out. So yeah, that's kind of what we do. We did work with Franco was kind of one of ours, and we our main involvement looked at trying to get him into the right placement, so supported living, which has been a real success, and he's actually going to be coming on board with our team as a peer support worker. So he's been going out as well to talk to parents and other young people, and that's been quite a recent thing, and that's been a huge success of young people being able to sort of connect with someone who's had the same experiences, and they can relate to them. So yeah, that's been really positive as well. But yeah, that's kind of, again, I've probably sort of talk all day about what we do, and there's lots of different situations for each young person, lots of challenges that they face, but also we face in trying to support them to move on in life. So I'll put my details in the chat, so if anyone does have any particular questions. Just to say, in terms of the adult side as well, they're in the referral process to our service. I'm not sure if everybody's aware of that, because there isn't a kind of a form as such. We've created our own form, whereas there are up to the sort of the children's side, there's a triage every Tuesday that the ICB run, and then referrals come through to us. So, but if there's anybody asking about the adult side, 18 to 25s, then if you can get in touch with me, I can share that information.
Somebody is asking, what is a Tier 4 admission?
So Tier 4 admission is where a young person, as Franco was... Oh, a bit of background noise there. Yeah, might be under might be sectioned, or it could be informal, like Franco was saying that his informal admission was. So basically into a mental health facility of sorts, to get the support that they needed, or if they're at risk to others or to themselves, and clinicians deem it appropriate that they are sectioned and they do go into a Tier 4 facility. That's all, and obviously they're all across the country, but it does vary. So we have different experiences of lots of different Tier 4 offers, some of which seem to really get it and some of which don't get it at all, and are really we know kind of the effects of going into Tier 4 on young people is that they often become a lot poorlier as a result. So it's about trying to work with the system to change that and to make those adjustments and to understand ultimately the autism, and meet that autistic need.
Yeah, thank you. Somebody has also asked what happens if you're over 25, but I think you said that they can get in touch with you.
Yeah, so what we hope for is that, if obviously, because we're one of the very few services that goes across that transition period, which really does work. So that young person, if they're 17, they have a key worker and they're still at risk, so and we still need to support them, then they will have that same person working with them across the age range, which really works well. So there isn't that kind of like cut off going into adult services. So our hope is that by the time we've kind of finished supporting and getting everything in place, they're at that stable stage, but that's not always the case, and they might still be in a Tier 4. We do work up to, like I say, around that kind of send offer of up to 25. Beyond that, it would be going to mental health services. So CMHT teams would be the main kind of players in that, and depending on where they sit across the system, whether they're in sitting within social care or health services. So that would be the offer. But obviously we've learned through the 3 years we've been running the service that services look very different in children and adults. Yeah, so that is a challenge. Which again I could talk about for another hour, but yeah.
And it says, what happens when the person is 25 years and still in need of key worker support?
Yeah, so that is the everywhere works a little bit differently. Some areas are trying to create sort of step down services. I know Hertfordshire is one of them that's looking at that sort of thing. We haven't come really across that at the moment, in terms of those admissions, but yeah, at the moment that is a kind of a gap, because there's only that certain capacity for us to work with that age range at the moment. But as long as the referral process and people are aware of these young people as soon as possible, then the success rate that we're having is seeing a reduction in admissions and a reduction in escalations, because we can get everything in place for that young person. But saying that, us as Autism Bedfordshire, we're always at the end of the phone. So even if young people are coming out of key working services, we've still built that relationship with them, and we still know their networks. So if someone's hitting a crisis point and they've just turned 26, then we're not going to try to help them. But as I say, the referral process into us would be that age range.
Okay, can I just ask you one more question, and I know you have to leave. What advice do you have for youths under 18 and over who do not have a diagnosis, with the length of time a diagnosis takes, however, presents and self-harm? What route would they go for support, and what help do they ask for?
Yeah, so obviously there is that challenge of the thresholds of CAMHS, for example, and we're getting calls all the time around quite risky behaviour, but they're not meeting threshold. So I suppose it's looking at again, each area is very different. So Milton Keynes have a mental health support team, and the Bedfordshire have the schools CAMHS teams. It's really worth, I would say, well, it's difficult because obviously every key worker area works slightly differently, but we are quite open and available. So if there is that scenario, Autism Bedfordshire also have a helpline, a general helpline for children's services. So contacting us through that for some advice. There are lots of things that can be looked at, but ultimately it's obviously about understanding that communication and where that's coming from, really. For example, is it school, is it education that is just very unmanageable, therefore it's leading to that sort of crisis point. But I think as health professionals, and especially some of the guidance that's come out around young people unable to attend education through mental health or needs, there are things that we can push now around education and adapting that in the right way, which is something I'm very passionate about, because I think until education changes and is structured in a different way for our young people, then the presentations are going to remain the same because it's unmanageable for them. So I think I've got off on a bit of a tangent with that one, but yeah, there are still offers, but it's about looking at the reasons for that behaviour, really, first and foremost, and understanding where that's coming from. And we see a couple of key reasons that are quite common. But again, if someone wants to sort of catch up with me separately, I can talk through that.
Yeah, thank you so much. I know we're over time and you need to get to another meeting, but
That's
thank
okay.
you for coming in and answering the questions. We will go through the questions later to see what else is in the chat, and try and get some answers to you all.
Yeah,
within the
I'll
email
just
this.
send this off as well. Yeah, but just for an example, the meeting I'm going to now is about a young man that has had 2 admissions, is now out in the community, and there doesn't seem to be, he's quite in a rural setting, and so what needs to happen is he needs some support to transition into adult services, access the community and feel safe and actually move forward. So it's yeah, who is going to try and offer that funding, which is going to be crucial to him keeping out of a tier 4. So that's the challenge for the next hour.
Good luck.
Thank you.
All right,
Okay.
thank you so much.
No worries. Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye for now. And now we would like to welcome Leanne, who I cannot see yet, but hoping I will be able to see soon, who is going to talk to us about the new care standards. Leanne, are you there?
I am. Hello.
Hello.
Hi, everyone. So lovely to see you all. And I also am having problems with Teams today. I think maybe it's a national thing. So bear with me. I've got some slides to share in a moment, but it might just be that you see a slight delay between me speaking and the screen, which is a little bit off-putting. But anyway, thank you so much for having me. Heather,
Have you got your camera on, Leanne?
Yeah, I do. Can people see me okay?
I've just got
people are nodding.
Yeah,
I can see you.
Okay,
You
so
are
it's just me then.
spotlighted, Leanne, so everyone should see your lovely face.
Oh, right. No pressure. Yeah, no, that's great.
Sorry.
Thank you. That's all right. So thanks for reaching out and inviting me along today. Just a little bit about me. So I'm Leanne Gelder. I'm Head of Quality Transformation in the NHS England national team, and we are a programme that's focused on improving the quality of care across inpatient mental health settings, and that's not just focused on mental health, but that also includes people with a learning disability and autistic people as well. So we obviously have a big task, and we've got lots of specific areas of work that we're focusing on. And the reason I'm here today is to talk to you about our culture of care standards. So got some slides and I'll go through that. And I suppose also just to say that I'm also a mental health nurse and spent most of my clinical career working with children and young people, so was really interested to hear about the last presentation and Franco talking, and also about some of the key worker schemes and how they've kind of evolved over time. So it's good to hear about some of that work, which is amazing. Okay, so I'm going to attempt to screen share now. We'll see how this goes. Might just be slightly slow, so bear with me. Okay, so I'll just skip through. So as I mentioned, there's quite a lot of information on some of these slides, so I'll try and pick out the kind of high level bits. But as I mentioned, we're a programme focused on improving the quality in inpatient care, so hospital settings, and really this came about, I'm sure lots of you on this call will be aware that there's been a number of concerns over the years about the quality of care that people receive when they go into hospital. And, you know, whenever I talk about this, I always think it's also really important to highlight the excellent care that people also receive at times. So this is not us saying that everything's terrible, but it is about recognising that for some people there have been some very poor experiences. And some of the things in particular that people told us is that they didn't hear, they didn't feel that their voice was being heard. Concerns around poor leadership, and particularly things that we would call closed cultures, and a lack of positive and open engagement. So we really thought, okay, what are the things that we need to focus on, and more importantly, what are the things that people who've been in these services think we should be focusing on? So we did a huge amount of work with people with lived experience. We visited lots of hospitals all up and down the country, and people told us things that probably aren't that surprising when we talk about it, that it's really important that we prioritise therapeutic relationships. So making sure that that is front and centre of the work that we're doing, that people feel valued at every level, that actually when people go into hospital, we call it citizenship, when people go into hospital, it's really important that they feel and remain valued members of their community. And that really is so important, we know, for people's recovery and people's discharge. And we know that by sending people far away from home, which I get, you know, sometimes may be unavoidable, but actually the impact that can have on people and their recovery journey can be hugely detrimental. Really important as well that when we say all, we mean all. So we've heard from Franco today, who as an autistic person told us about his experiences. It's really important that all of our hospital care includes everyone, so that we're not externalizing people, or we're moving away from this culture of referring on and what we might sometimes refer to as othering people. And then really important is that we consider trauma in all of this, because we know, again, that, you know, lots of people coming into hospital will have had trauma in their past, but also lots of people will be traumatized by their experiences in hospital. And so we thought really hard about what we needed to do. And one of the things that we talked about was how we define culture. You know, when we talk about culture in services, what do we mean? So we agreed that we would co-produce some standards that really set out what culture means, and I'm going to share those with you in a moment. And these have been published, so some of you again on the call may well have seen them, which would be great, but I'll make sure I share the link as well so that you can hopefully share far and wide after today. And so we thought, once we've defined these standards, we need to think about how we can support services to implement them. And so we designed a huge programme of support across the country. And again, I'll talk to you about that in a bit more detail in a moment, and make sure that when we're working in hospitals, that staff are supported to really prioritise that therapeutic relationship, recognising areas where there's really excellent practice and thinking about how we can learn from that, and also how can we reduce all of those burdens that staff tell us they have. So, you know, lots of those checklists, some of those things have to happen, but lots of things are duplicating information and take away from that really important time to care for the people in the services and that need it the most. So I'm really delighted to share this lovely illustration with you for those people who haven't seen it. And this was created by one of our lived experience colleagues who works with us in our programme. She's done a fantastic job, I think you'll agree. And these are our 12 culture standards. So you can see them set out here in kind of rooms, if you like, in this building. But all of these, really importantly, are underpinned by care being trauma-informed, autism-informed, and culturally competent. So what that really talks about is recognising and addressing inequalities, particularly thinking about racial inequalities, where we know that people are likely to experience different quality of care depending on their protected characteristics, which is of course unacceptable, and we need to really address. So I won't read through them all. I'll make sure you've got a copy of this so you can see it, but you'll also see at the top that we reference citizenship and co-production. And just to say that these standards were written by people who have been in mental health hospitals, both adults and young people, and included people with a learning disability and autistic people as well. So we're really proud of this work. I think it really outlines what we mean when we talk about culture. And then just building on from that, so these are the 12 standards laid out in a bit less of a colourful way. But underneath each standard, we have a commitment. So talking about what we actually mean by that standards. So just to highlight a couple here, lived experience, for example, at the top. What we mean by that is that in services, we expect people to be valuing lived experience, and that means having paid roles at all levels, and that including design, delivery, governance and oversight of services. So really embedded. And then just to highlight another one that was particularly important to people was around relationships. So what we mean by relationships being a core standard is that relationships are high quality, focused on human rights, and that that real understanding that relationship and connection is what makes people feel safe, not tick box risk assessments, you know, red, amber, green type setups. It's about that relationship that really underpins everything around personalised care. Okay, so then we designed this really ambitious national offer to help embed these standards across the country. And again, lots of information on here, but just to give you some high level, this offer involves 6 pillars, which you'll see on this box in the right. And what we thought about, how do we do culture change? And, one of the things that we're really aware of, particularly in a national team, is that a top down telling people to change their culture is not how it works. Absolutely needs to come from within. It needs to be about working alongside people and actually role modeling those standards that we've just talked about. So I'll go through the pillars just very briefly to kind of talk a bit more about what we mean by them. But actually, this is This is a 2.5-year programme, so just to make that clear, and we're part way into that. That will run until March 2026. So this is how this will be rolled out. And I've got some next steps to show you in a minute. So this is just a little bit on the interventions. So there'll be a quality improvement offer for wards, and this is for mental health wards across England. And just to say to people as well, because I often get asked this, both NHS and independent sector. So it's any inpatient mental health settings that are NHS commissioned. And this quality improvement offer for wards will involve coaching to ward teams to help recognise the culture commitments and put those into practice. And this will be done through a QI training approach. So lots of you here, I'm sure, will have been involved in quality improvement offers, and some of you might be from hospitals that are already part of this, which would be great. The second one is thinking about cross-organisation quality improvement. So it's really important to have that offer for wards, but it's really important to be doing the same thing across the whole organisation, because actually we need to recognise that culture change needs to happen at all levels. And this will also include things like working with teams who might not be doing clinical work, frontline clinical work, so things like human resources teams, estates teams, governance. So really important. And then also in the same kind of theme, work with the exec teams of organisations. So that will be done in a number of ways, but will also include lived experience mentoring. So we have lived experience colleagues as part of the programme who will be offering mentoring and reflective practice to executive board members. And then the last three, so moving away from risk stratification. This is quite a big one. So we know from the evidence that's out there, from the recent NICE guidelines, that lots of the risk, sort of traditional risk assessments, if you like, and risk management tools are not a reliable indicator of somebody's risk of harm to themselves or to others. So how do we make sure that people feel really safe when they're being cared for at, you know, arguably the most vulnerable time in their life? And we know that what does work is that relationship and personalised approach to safety planning. So there'll be a really key theme within this programme around that. And as part of that, we'll be thinking with teams around reflective practice and how they can be supported to write policies, because we know that, you know, organisations have to have policies around this that think differently. We then have a ward manager development programme, and this is going to be going live a bit later in the year. And this will be providing direct support to ward managers to develop skills to help them achieve the culture change and to really have the confidence to be leaders in their organisation and work with their teams. So again, really exciting. And then last but definitely not least, there will be a strand of work that surrounds staff support, and this is again really building on that relational approach to care that we've already talked about, but you know, recognizing that we don't do that just by training people. It's about offering reflective and restorative spaces. It's about supporting people to understand their own needs and some of the challenges that may arise from working in hospital settings and how that might feel for them. You know, we recognise that people go into the care sector, the vast majority of people go into the care sector because they want to make a difference for people, but it's really important that we focus on that self-awareness as part of that. Okay, so I think we're nearly there. So just a little bit on the progress of this work for those that are interested. We have 60 organisations signed up across the country. So that includes all NHS trusts, all NHS mental health trusts. We've got some acute ones in there as well, and all of the major independent sector providers of inpatient care. We've got 213 wards involved so far across the first 4 pillars that I talked to you about. We've got 10 of those organisations identified to start to lead on some of the risk stratification work. And then as part of this, we're establishing 10 learning networks. So these are spaces for people to come together and share the learning from this programme, to really talk about what's working, maybe what's not working, how to get ideas from each other. So really important, because we need this to be sustainable long term. And then I've talked to you about the staff support element and the ward manager training programme. And then I won't go into this in huge amount of detail, but just to say that we have a futures page. I know not all of you here will be able to access NHS Futures, but for those who can, we've got some more information on there. We've also got our website, so when I've finished in a sec, I'll drop in the chat website where anyone can have a look, and that also includes the standards in their kind of public form that I've just talked to you about. Right, I'm going to stop sharing there and then see if there's any questions or anything that people would like me to clarify, because I'm aware that I just shared a lot of information in a short space of time.
So we've got one person saying that people with autism need personalised care, so they do not need to go into hospital. At present, they get no care. And then also, has NSFT signed up? Don't know what NSFT stands for.
Is that Norfolk and Suffolk Foundation Trust?
Yes, it could be.
If that's the question, then yes, they have.
Thank you. Yeah, someone has put that in.
Yes, they have, definitely.
Yeah. Has anybody else got any questions for Leanne?
I don't know if it's helpful, but I can just see a couple of comments about needing improving of care to avoid hospital in the first place. And I suppose just to pick up on that point, and I think there's a couple of comments related to that. Yeah, I'd wholeheartedly agree. So just to say a bit about my background, before I came into this role, I was working on the Transforming Care programme in NHS England and led on the refresh of the care, education and treatment review policy. And obviously, for me, we can't be looking at inpatient care in isolation. It's really important that we do look at inpatient care, of course, but I think, it's about understanding that whole pathway for people, and that actually, if we've got it right much earlier, people shouldn't be coming into hospital in the first place. And there will always be some people that need hospital care, but we do know that, that there's a way too many people that are in hospital that actually, if the services were right in the community, they wouldn't need to be there. And so we're working very closely with our colleagues in the Learning Disability and Autism programme in particular, around some of the work that's going on in the community side of things, but also our colleagues in the mental health space as well. Because, yeah, this is one part of a much bigger picture, isn't it?
Definitely. Thank you. I'm now hearing my voice coming back at me, which is very weird. And somebody else has put, people with learning disability have their register for annual health check. Do people with autism have their register under GP practices? There had been a pilot for an autism annual health check that hasn't gone national as far as I know yet. I don't know if anybody else on the call knows anything more than that. If they do, please do put that in the chat. And if not, then Leanne, can I just say thank you to you, and I'll move on showing more of Franco's story.
No problem. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you so much.
No worries.
Okay, so I'll just share my screen again. Annette, am I still frozen, or am I moving around a bit more now?
Hi,
So
Heather. I can't actually see your face at the moment. I can see your screen now. We can see the slides. So
that's the most important thing. You don't
yeah,
really want to see my face. So I'm now going to carry on with Franco. So we're going to have another 2 films in this set, where he's gone into a private ward and experience there, and then what happened afterwards.
They found me a bed after I'd been there 3 weeks, and that bed was in a private hospital. It's a very well-renowned private hospital, and we were looking at it online. The building was absolutely beautiful. Like, it had gardens. They said they had so much therapeutic support, and like when the paramedics, when the transport service came to pick me up, they were just like, "We've been to this place. You're so lucky to be here." And I just thought, okay. And then I arrived there, and it was beautiful gardens, a beautiful building, and they walked me into reception. It was massive staircase, fancy paintings on the walls, and then they're just like, "Yep, we'll get someone from the adolescent ward to come." And so HCA came and took me up. So it's a paying hospital. They have 1 paying ward, and then they had 2 non-paying wards, and they definitely showed a lot of favoritism. And, well, obviously the people who were paying get better care, obviously, but the care was so much better, and the safety was so much better, and the therapy was so much better. And so they took me up to the ward. Ward was grubby, wasn't very nice. The windows didn't open. Windows didn't open either, which was annoying. I mean, normally you have like a knob that you can turn that like leaves you back to a grate, but I didn't have that. You just had to stay in the warm room, I guess. On my second day, I got a message from it wasn't a message from my partner. It was something that massively upset me, and it sort of ended up with us breaking up. And of course, they were the reason I didn't jump off like the building. And so I decided to kill myself after that. And so I got a ligature, got into bed, went under the covers, and pretended to sleep. I pretended to sleep, and they had cameras in the room, so there were cameras watching me the whole time. And tightened the ligature, started to choke, and that was incredibly painful because like all the air was like being forced out of my lungs. And that's and you're choking, but like once you've got no air, your lungs just like sort of spasm, but with no air in them, which is a horrible feeling, and it gets gradually more painful each time. And so then I got scared, and I tried to loosen it. I tried to loosen it. I tried to get it off my neck because like I didn't want to die in that much pain, and the pain was so unreal. So I couldn't get it off. I actually got stuck. And I think I've been there for about 10 minutes at this point. 10 minutes in a ligature. I think I was on I-10s, I-15s, something like that. And I wasn't checked on. And so they had an alarm by my bed. Pushed the alarm. Nothing happened. Pushed the alarm again. Nothing happened. Pressed the alarm probably another 100 times. And then about a while later, someone came into my room, just opened the door, and just looked at me and was like, "Oh, he's asleep. He's under the covers. He's fine." I was like, "Well, why is..." And I was just thinking, well, this is me dead now. Dead from someone not looking under the covers. And I wasn't able to breathe properly. I had like air coming into my lungs because it was loosened slightly, but I couldn't breathe properly. And so I was very slowly dying. I was losing consciousness gradually. I lost like movement and things, and I couldn't think at all because like I had no oxygen in my brain. And so all I could think about was just like pressing that button. And I kept pressing that button, and I eventually, maybe about 5 minutes later, they just like came in, they pulled back the covers, and they saw me very nearly dead. I think they thought I was dead when they first saw me. And they just sprinted back, grabbed the ligature cutters. They jumped on my bed, and I remember them pulling it back on my neck, which had me in a position kind of like that. I was like that for a while, and then I went out. I went out cold because like they pulled on it, so I cut it, and then they so I cut off my hair, and then they cut it. And then I remember vomiting and spitting out a lot of blood and just crying and screaming, and it was not a nice experience. And yeah, they tried to comfort me. Well, they didn't really try to comfort me. They took off all my bedding. They put me on oxygen for a while, and then, but they didn't acknowledge that they'd left me for about 25 minutes there without properly checking on me. And I thought I was going to die. And to be fair, I probably should have died there for medical reasons. That should have killed me, but it didn't. And there was never any acknowledgement that it nearly killed me. It was just, oh well, we've saved him, so it's good. We've saved him. We've done a good job. Crisis averted. Pat on the back for all of us. But no, they took all my things away, all my clothes. They actually took my Switch and all my Switch games. And interestingly, when they took my Switch, it was in a little Switch bag. All of the games magically disappeared from that when they took them. So they must have taken all the games out, and no one could ever find them the rest of the time I was there. And they just, but when they did the writing down of everything that was in my room, because like they do like a record of like all the things you get. They wrote down everything that was in my room. They're just like, oh, you didn't have any Switch games written down. You should have said that they should be written down, so I didn't see what you were writing down. So apparently that was my fault. I was put on 1-to-1, and I had a lot of incidents after that in the following week. Absconsions, more ligatures, just anything I could think of, just as much chaos as possible because I was in so much distress. I just wanted that. And I calmed down eventually. I was on meal supplements because I didn't want to eat. I felt sick anytime I was eating, so I was on meal supplements. I didn't have clothes. I had like a pair of shorts, and I didn't have bedding. I had like a duvet, and like no sheets or anything. And no, they didn't have anti-ligature clothing at that hospital. I actually asked in one of the group meetings if we could have anti-ligature clothing, and they spent about 6 months just saying, oh, we can't find any. And then they said, we found some that don't fit. And then eventually they just said, we can't afford them. They're too expensive. I've actually looked into buying some myself just out of curiosity. They're a few £100. And if a few £100 is the difference between a child being naked and between having something to cover yourself up so you at least have a little bit of dignity, then I don't really think you can defend not getting it, because pretty much every ward in the UK has them except that place, and that really just shows how poorly we were treated against the paying ones. So yeah, I was there for a while. Care was not good at all. Probably one of the most horrible psychiatrists I have ever had, I think. She was just not a nice person. I know that obviously as a psychiatrist you have to be very professional. You can't like give in to people's demands if they're not going to be safe. But she was just very mean about everything. There was no real empathy showed, and I remember that. And there was it was a very unsafe ward. A lot of incidents, a lot of absconsions. And obviously they regularly had access to stuff that people could hurt themselves with. So multiple times, like the doctors would all give us stuff, and they'd all have they'll all have staples in, and I just think this is not going to go well. And then obviously, about half an hour later, they'd just be screaming, and then someone covered in blood. And that happened far too many times. So they let me go after 4 months. I spoke to the psychiatrist, and like I asked about placement because I said I didn't want to go back, and they just said social care will never house you. We're sending you back home. So they let me go after 4 months. I spoke to the psychiatrist, and like I asked about placement because I said I didn't want to go back, and they just said social care will never house you. We're sending you back home. And I said, you're going to send me back home to Milton Keynes, and Milton Keynes has no support. And they didn't really want to believe that, because they were just like, yeah, you're their responsibility, so they have to look after you, because they can't look after me because they have no resources. So they let me go back to Milton Keynes, and I enrolled in a college course, and I started about 2 weeks after my discharge, and I started doing health and social care. I have a fear of like tattoos and piercings, and I struggle a lot with that, and I have struggled a lot with that for a long time. And first day, went there, so many of them that I was like, I can't do this. Went back home, had an incident. My sister found me in my bed, something around my neck. She dragged me out of bed, cut it off, and then I started trying to use my clothes. So my parents had to take all my clothes off, and then they had to restrain me for about 45 minutes. Police came, put me in handcuffs, took me to hospital, and then sent back home from hospital with nothing, of course. And I then developed a very bad relationship with ligature, I guess. I was doing it quite a lot, sort of multiple times every day, just sort of like in secret. Like I'd have a little bootlace, I'd just keep around and I'd just tighten it and then take it off. And I'd do that most days because it was my form of self-harm really, and it didn't leave much of a mark. So it was a lot more discreet than other things. And I did that for a long time, and my mental health was getting worse and worse. So I ended up going to A&E a few times, just going to A&E saying I'm having a crisis, do something, and they just sent me back. And I must have gone to A&E, asked for help, and been sent back sort of 10 times with no support really, because they didn't have any support. I mean, they give you a phone call once a day and just say, how are you? You're fine. Do you need to come back to A&E? And if the answer is yes, then you either come back to A&E and they just send you back home. So I didn't really have any faith in that anymore. And so my little self-harming thing, I decided I'm done with this now. I'm not going to use this for self-harm anymore. I'm going to use it to die. And essentially, that's what I started doing. I started trying to kill myself with it. And that led to quite a lot of ambulances, a lot of police, a lot of having my clothes cut off, a lot of having my legs tied together and put in handcuffs, and I swallowed batteries once, and they had to like put me on an X-ray, so they like took my clothes off, put handcuffs in front of me, and like put me through the X-ray machine, and then they just carried me off, put me onto a bed, back to A&E. And yeah, that happened a lot, and then eventually I was sent back home to my parents, and like they had to look after me, and they had to do this for like 3 weeks to a month, just me self-harming constantly. They had to one-to-one me, so I had to be with them at all times, had to be wearing my shorts. I couldn't be in the bathroom. I had to have someone stand outside the bathroom with like the door ajar when I was like going to the toilet. And then I didn't wash the whole time properly. I just sort of like kneeled at the side of the bath and just like washed myself with the flannel, and kept going to A&E, kept getting sent back. And one last time, my parents left me alone for about 5 minutes, and I used this time to properly go for it. And they walked in on me, and they thought I was dead, cut me out, and they were just like, "We need to take him to hospital." So they frog marched me out to the car, locked the car doors, put me in there, got me to hospital. Got to A&E, started having an incident in A&E. Had about six men on top of me, taking my clothes off, dragging me out. And then they finally said to me, "It's becoming increasingly harder for us to send you back home and not do something." I was like, "You should have done that a long time ago, mate." And I was so nihilistic. And I don't think I'd ever been more unwell at that point. Just the amount that all of this had like destroyed my life. And the amount I was just so done. I was so done with the mental health system. And just people say I had no way out. At that point I had no way out. I was either go inpatient, relatively forced, or die. And I was trying to die, and I was trying to do my best to die, but obviously it didn't work, and they sent me inpatient.
Obviously, some of this is quite hard to listen to and to watch. And I'm going to stop showing videos there, but there are some more within the slides that we'll be sending out for you to be able to watch, that you'll be able to watch at your own leisure. But I think it's quite traumatic watching some of this stuff, that I think you probably had a fill of it today. So I'm going to just go down to just talk through a few of these things, and it'll be a chance if you want to ask any questions. Sorry about this cough. So alongside doing these webinars, we have voice groups with adults, and we do talk to them so that they inform what we are doing within the webinars. And we've also been talking to professionals as well. And for young people coming through from CAMHS into adult services, I think both professionals who are working in those adult mental health hospitals and the young autistic adults that we've spoken to, they've both expressed how these are probably not the best places for a young adult to be going into, that it's quite a traumatic move from a children's service to an adult service, but there doesn't seem to be an alternative at the moment for anywhere else for them to be going into. And we've also heard how traumatized some of the autistic adults are that we've met from what they've experienced. And I think when you listen to Franco, he's obviously experienced some things in there that he would not have come across had he not been admitted, and how detrimental that can be upon the person. And then we also ask them, you know, what could help an autistic adult? EMDR, the eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. I don't know if any of you have ever heard of this as a therapy, but we've come across quite a few autistic adults where this has been a help. For one family that we were talking to, their child could not, or their adult child, could not visualize things, so therefore it did not work for her. But some people are wanting to try this, but are finding it quite difficult to access, and quite difficult to access in a timely manner as well. A lot felt that there was a lot more sensory training was needed for mental health staff to understand how the sensory side of things are affecting the adults all the time, and the effect that that is having on people that is maybe not looked at. And then some said a greater understanding of what anxiety is, and how often they are struggling with PTSD from the trauma that they have witnessed through their lives in accessing services. And then CBT, cognitive behavioural therapy, can be really useful, but these really do. The techniques used must be tailored to suit an autistic person, and the person delivering it must have a really good understanding of autism. So I am really sorry about this cough. So that's where we're going to leave it today. We will be sending everything out to you. We'll have a look at the questions now and see if there's anything there. I'm just going to mute my microphone again while I have another cough. But we're always looking for people to share good practice with us that we can share with other people. So someone here has said that my daughter received EMDR for PST and ADHD arranged by a GP. Did you find it helpful? That would be quite nice to know. And Hertfordshire offer this in adult community mental health teams and some IAP teams. That is really good. But it seems to be quite spasmodic depending on where you live as to whether you receive anything. Oh, it did. Lovely. Thank you. So if anyone's got any more questions, please put them in. We will be sending the full link out, and then you can watch the videos at your own leisure. Please do share them with other people. Franco has given permission for these to be shared. And you know, when we have autistic people helping us with these videos, they put themselves out there to help change things for the better. So please do share. I'm so sorry about the cough. So thank you for joining us today. You've got the email address here, hearmeseme@autismbeds.org. Any questions, please do get in touch, or the reply address to Annette with the invitation that's sent out. Our next one is going to be on maternity and autism in September. So please do share this with any of your maternity teams within your areas. It would be great to have some there. If anybody has got some good examples of good practice in this area of understanding autistic ladies as they're going through their whole maternity process, please do let us know, because we know things need to change. We know there are some good examples out there, and we just like to share it across the whole region. So thank you again for being with us today. Apologies again for my cough, and hopefully I'll see you fitting well at the next one. So thank you.